Have you guys ever wondered why there's a time delay between when you think about something and when it appears in your reality? Well, quantum physics may have the answer. So I was watching this TikTok about the double slit experiment, and it got me thinking, and it gave me a really interesting idea. So if you don't know, the double slit experiment was an experiment where scientists put a device over here that would eject electrons, and there was this wall in front of the device but with two openings. And what they expected to find, and what they actually did find, was that on the other side, right over here, the electrons would pass through the barrier, the opening in the barrier, and then would land on the other wall over here, directly across from where the openings were. But then the scientists found something really interesting. What they found was that when they weren't observing the experiment, it actually looked like this, where you had several lines of electrons on the second wall, even though there were only two openings on the first wall. So how could that be? Well, the conclusion that scientists came up with was really interesting. They simply said that when you're observing it, reality acts as particles. In other words, particles would pass through the openings and would land on the other side as expected. But when you're not observing reality, or when you weren't observing the experiment, everything in reality acts like a wave. And so the particles would, pass through the openings in the barrier and then would separate according to the wave pattern that you see here. And they concluded that reality operates in the quantum field when you're not looking as a wave and not as a particle. And only when you observe something does it actually become manifest in the form of matter. So that's when I got the idea. So here's my idea. So because that science experiment shows us that when we're not observing something, everything is in the waveform, and when we observe it with our eyes or with our senses and our perception, it coalesces into particles and into matter. So when we use our mind's eye to basically visualize, our physical eyes see the world around us. Our mind's eye has access to what is in the quantum field. So when our mind's eye observes something that we're visualizing, we're observing something in the quantum field. And there is a little bit of a time delay, but that actually coalesces what we're observing in the quantum field into reality. That's my theory. And that's how I think manifestation works, and why there's a little bit of a time delay. But our pineal gland, or our inner eye, is actually observing something in the quantum reality. And it just takes a little bit of time to coalesce into physical reality when our regular eyes can see it. Just like the double slit experiment. When we're observing something, it becomes particles. When we're not observing something, it exists in the infinite, quantum field as a waveform.